Hi, welcome back to the Adster podcast, episode 6. I'm glad to have with me back again Ketan, Chandak, who's my co-founder and also our CTO. And we are here to talk about some really exciting stuff from our perspective and some new developments, which have taken place very recently from a patent perspective and an IP perspective that we'd love to chat about. Ketan, first of all, welcome back to the episode.
It's been my pleasure to have been here the first time around. It always is a great thing to geek out on ad tech with people who know the industry better. So yeah, I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah. So, just diving a bit into things, and I was reading this interesting newsletter that comes around. I'm sure you get it as well, Ketan. This is the newsletter by Felix Braberg, where it's the ad monetization newsletter that he sends out. They also have a fantastic podcast, by the way, which is the 2.5 Gamers podcast, and they talk about tips on monetization for publishers, more so if you're a gaming publisher. But I think there's fantastic advice in there for all publishers, and if you haven't already subscribed to it, please do. In one of the newsletters, Felix talks about the importance of the entire mediation layer from a publisher standpoint, and especially as we talk about app monetization. A lot of publishers today are beginning to recognize and choose one or the other mediation platform. So Felix makes a very good point, and he talks about ad networks, about bidding, and how the mediation layer is essentially where a ton of data, from the bid stream is actually being processed and controlled. And therefore, it's so important from a publisher's perspective to pick the right mediation partner and ensure that, their monetization continues to scale. However, for an industry that is unregulated, as we know now, there is most mediation platforms don't operate in a similar fashion. There are differences among the platforms, and there are differences in the data they give back to publishers as well. And that really creates a kind of an opacity for the publisher in not understanding exactly how the mediation platform is running the auction and deciding on which networks have actually won, right? So in a way, it is still not entirely democratic from a publisher standpoint. And I think at Adster, one of our missions right from day one has been to tilt the scales back in the favor of the publisher and make sure that they have control or access to data that they can use to employ better results from an overall ad mon perspective, but also make sure that their app is functioning well, that, everything is going to plan. So, with that backdrop, I know we've just been granted a patent for, something that we did in this space, and would love to hear you maybe first talk about the existing one and then, about what we are going to be doing next as well.
Right. As you rightly said, so when it comes to mediation platforms, even header bidding platforms, the publishers are always at the mercy of how to make your complex app or site work along with them. And obviously, there are a ton of such platforms available in the market. So as a publisher, if you're starting into monetization, or even if you're, let's say, a few years down that journey, you're not sure who to call when, which is the best one. Maybe for user A, mediation platform A is better. For user B, mediation platform B is better. So a lot of publishers would try to essentially say, okay, I'll try to use them both, and then add latency and complexity to their code base. So this is a common problem that we've seen at Adster. And in the last 2 years, we are a publisher-first company. Every piece of software that comes out of our book essentially makes the publisher's life easier when it comes to all of this. So yeah, so talking about the patent that we have right now, that essentially makes it easier for the publisher to understand what is actually really happening under the hood when it comes to mediation platforms A, B, and C. What happens is usually the mediation platforms are very opaque about what bid price is being sent, how much are you getting paid for the ad is a bare minimum, right? But that doesn't happen. No publisher in real time is able to figure out, okay, mediation platform A is giving me $0.50, the platform B is giving me 60 cents, so I should show the B's ad. They have to look at time series historical data, figure out what is performing, what is not, run some complex A/B testing on their entire user base, which may or may not work at scale, and then do switching, calling multiple partners, and then the header bidding partners also come into the mix to add to the complexity. So all of this is essentially solved seamlessly with what we have built, and the patent is essentially on top of that, because all of this adds. So finally, user experience is the most important thing as a publisher.
Yeah.
If you are on a page A and you hop onto page B and you see 3 seconds later a flickering ad comes, you might be getting paid for it, but then your user would be like, okay,
you don't want that.
I am not in for this experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
What you would want is that as soon as you click on page B, there is no flicker, the ad comes seamlessly, and you under the hood is doing all the intelligence, all the decision making that you can to ensure that you are getting paid the most for the ad. And it is as contextual and as relevant to the user you're showing the ad to.
And also, I mean, I think you brought up a great point on the user experience part related to ads. One of the main reasons why a lot of publishers hesitate in scaling is that because there is latency in ad serving, they need to increase the number of ad slots to maybe get the same bang for the buck, or if what they could have got earlier. If they could reliably get an ad every time, they knew that there was a slot for an ad. Because that's not the case, and because they're shooting in the dark, and playing with so many variables in this equation, they tend to possibly over correct on that front. But with this now, patent that we've developed and with the technology that we have, even a 33% or a 40% improvement in the latency means that you can actually optimize the number of ad slots that you have possibly. Right? Would you say?
So I think I mentioned this last time. More ads does not mean more revenue.
Exactly. Yeah.
You have to essentially figure out what a user base does, what are the most frequent engagement patterns on your app site, whatever, and then figure out the most optimal strategy to monetize them.
Right.
And apart from obviously fill rates, render rate is one of the most important strategies there. How do you optimize that? And render rate is essentially a function of latency, right? And the patent that we have, when you have 3-4 header bidding platforms, and then let's say a couple of mediation platforms, and then finally you're doing all the decision making on the client to show the ad, this adds a lot of latency, right? But with our patent, we reduce the number of hops that you need to make from those header bidding platforms to the mediation platform, submit a bid, get an ad, show the ad. All of that is streamlined in a way that let's say, for example, in most cases, the number of network hops drops from 3 to 2, which is a 33% optimization, right? At the same internet speed, all conditions remaining same.
Right.
And then also, we are ensuring that you get paid the maximum for this ad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how we help our publishers. And for them, it's just a black box, like how Stripe is, right? All they have to do is whenever there is an ad opportunity, just initialize a SDK, call for ads, and everything else, all the complexity, how to ensure the hops are limited, the calls are parallel in nature, the decision making on the client is optimal, everything is done by us.
So, Ketan, one of the things that we have always sort of envisioned or stood for is to give more control back to publishers and to democratize the space as best as we can. Even though we are operating in an industry that is, like we were saying earlier, not regulated or not in the best form for this, ready to accept democracy maybe, but we are doing our bit. So what should a publisher really look forward to from its mediation stack, right? If we can get to that, what should they expect? Because right now they just take whatever they are able to get, which is an ad at best, and then some revenue. They don't know if that's the best revenue they could have gotten, but they're having to accept it because, they feel that this particular mediation stack works best on my app, and then whatever they're giving me probably is the best after, considering open bidding, etc., etc. And we're talking of the, big players like Google, AppLovin, and others. Some of them, again, very unequal landscape. Some of them give you the bid price, some of them don't. Some of them give it to you during the bid, some of them give it to you afterwards, and so on and so forth. But from a publisher's lens, what should their expectations be from their mediation stack? Like, what can they expect to get?
So one of the things which we have figured out is lacking in most mediation platforms is transparency. So essentially what the mediation platform promises that you just again include our SDK whenever there is an ad opportunity, call us and we'll figure out the rest, which is exactly how Adster also works. But what we also do is, since we are working publisher first in a way, we ensure that you have 100% visibility on the entire life cycle of an ad, starting from the opportunity to, let's say, the impression and the click, and then what happens post ad. How, what optimizations are we doing under the hood post ad? You have full control as to which ones do you want to enable, which ones do you want to stop. So stuff like, let's say, mediation platform A. For simplicity, I'll just name GAM and App 11 here. Let's say you know that you have a one app which is essentially pan India. Maybe for a city A, GAM works better. For a city B, App 11 works better. How do you, without making changes on the client side, run this A/B test?
Right.
Let's say city A, App 11, comma, city B, GAM, and then switch it up and see how it's doing, how are the revenues changing, how are the latency rates, how are the render rates, eCPMs changing. So all of that can be easily configured and run by our platform. And since we are an SDK, we understand your user at a very deep level without obviously sending any PII data back to our servers. There is a lot of client-side data crunching intelligence happening. So on our dashboards, you'll be able to see exactly what happened when you ran this experiment A versus that experiment B. And then we also do this where we are saying that, okay, because of our patent and because of the optimized way we run the entire auction on the client side, how much latency are you saving up on if you are not using us? So all of that visibility is completely available to you, and it is obviously out of the box for you if you start using our products.
Got it. Yeah. And, there's this concept of meta mediation that we talk about, and maybe a few others in the industry have now started to also talk about. One of the things that meta mediation used to stand for earlier was, because of this, landscape, is that if a publisher wanted to use multiple mediation platforms, they would have to, based on historical data, build some kind of a decision engine which would fork their traffic across different mediation platforms, and in the interest of generating the best yield, right?
Right.
But that also felt always like a solution that was less optimal, right? So, and I know as an extension to what we've already done and filed in the existing patent, we're also come up with a new patent which is currently under examination, where we have also looked to disrupt this space, right? Can you just shed some light on that part, without, of course, divulging all the details? But yeah, would love to know, how publishers can benefit really from this.
So the follow-up patent that we have essentially helps us figure out what these mediation platforms are paying you in real time on a per ad level. So earlier, since, for example, GAM does not share the bid price normally for the ad, right?
Yeah.
So if you had GAM and App 11 both, and both send you an ad, how do you decide which one to show and which one to? You can look at historical data, you can look at that, but there are so many factors. Seasonality comes in, the global macro changes, the global ad spending changes. So the eCPMs might be very different 3 months ago and then today. What is more ideal is that I somehow figure out, okay, right at this moment, Google is paying me $0.50, App 11 is paying me 80 cents. So I'll just show App 11's ad. And this follow-up patent, essentially, we have figured out a way to be able to figure this out in real time and run a true auction between mediation partners on the client in real time.
Right.
So, and this is a lot of second order, third order effects, where it also helps us understand these platforms on the user level in real time better. And then it supercharges the yield optimizer algorithms that we have built on the client.
Right.
And then we collect a lot of these insights and aggregate, send them back to our server, understand what we did good, what we can do better. And then the algorithm again, in the second, third iteration, we even more optimized to ensure that the fill rates, render rates, the eCPM are as maximum as possible for you.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, and so what it's really doing is, from a publisher standpoint, is that it is giving you a lot more visibility and control, and the ability to understand how your inventory is actually being valued by the independent mediation stacks, the header bidding stacks, and the networks behind them, right?
Right.
Uh, so fundamentally, considering how this is all playing out, and of course, no one really can foresee how things will change with some of the largest players, because there's always a lot of dynamism in this industry. But from a publisher standpoint, when we look at this entire, the proposition that we are bringing to the market as Adster, is it something that they can anticipate will generate a healthy incremental jump in revenues from ad serving because of all these efficiencies? And if so, would you be willing to hazard a guess? I mean, I don't want to throw a curveball, but yeah. I know it's still early days in terms of work, which is work in progress with a number of publishers that we're already in conversation with. But what can they really expect by way of incremental increase in revenue that they can see?
Right. So we've talked about this multiple times, where end of the day, your ad revenue is a fill times vendor times eCPM.
Right. Yeah.
I'm assuming the ad opportunity is same. You can't, because you can't just increase the inventory you have.
Right.
So, and all our efforts have been to optimize these three metrics. So the first patent that we had is optimizing technically the render rate, because you're reducing latency by 30-40%. So all scenarios, all conditions equal, you should expect a boost of, again, 25-30% on your revenues, just based on let's say the render rate improvements that we do.
Right.
And the follow-up patent and the yield optimizer algorithms that we keep on improving every week, because our rollouts happen every week, is essentially, from what we observed, is across the board, it is a 15-20% jump as is.
Right.
So if you club them both, it's at least 40-50% jump. See, we have seen publishers with more than 100% also.
Right.
But 40-50% is, I would say, a fair, rough estimate.
Got it. Fantastic. I think it'll be great to see all of this come to life soon. And we all have our fingers crossed in terms of the patent. I'm sure it's a follow-up patent. So there is obviously the examination process is slightly more streamlined, and we're hoping that, this we'll have some good news to share with our publishers and audience here in the coming months on the patent itself, and the fact that it's been awarded. And I think for the industry at large also, it'll be a big step forward, because it is moving in the direction that it should, which is more which is democratizing it, giving more transparency to publishers and more control back again. Thanks, Ketan. It was lovely having you on this episode, and hope to continue chatting with you more on subsequent ones as well. Thanks for being here.
Sure, the pleasure is all mine.
Thanks for watching. And if you're a publisher that's looking to optimize your ad stack and scale monetization from ads, please do reach out. And we're also sharing the link to our patent in the comments section. So please take a look. And we are happy to field any questions that you may have about the patent itself, or how our technology stack works. This is also Adster's initiative to give back more to the community. So if you're just interested and want to learn more about how things could be better, feel free to reach out.